Hello there and welcome to my channel. My name is Kristen. Here I like to talk about social and cultural issues through the lens of pop culture and public figures, usually but not always. Today's video is going to be about girlboss feminism and Amazon's Cinderella. As you can see, I'm trying to dress in theme a little bit. I did not have a Cinderella costume, but I noticed she wears her hair back in like a kerchief and has a little apron on her dress, so I got a headband and I made an apron with a pillowcase. The new Amazon Cinderella movie is an adaptation of a very old and famous folktale with countless iterations. The most famous version of the Cinderella folktale is Disney's Cinderella. It's a classic Disney movie. Disney's Cinderella is a pretty sweet movie. It depicts a young woman who endures adversity, but shows the characteristics of resilience, imagination, creativity, and compassion. And through those positive qualities, she's able to achieve kind of an unexpected reward of falling in love and getting married to a prince. As I'm sure many of my audience is already aware, many bad faith criticisms of the movie have been created based off of boiled down versions of the plot, basically saying this movie is about a girl waiting for a prince to save her, when if you watch the movie, that's not actually what happens. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 classic Disney movies that are anti-feminist. Number 1, Beauty and the Beast romanticizes Stockholm Syndrome. Number 2, The Little Mermaid is about a girl who gives up her voice to be with a man. Number 3, Cinderella is about a girl who waits around for a prince to save her. Number 4, Sleeping Beauty is about a princess who waits around for a prince to save her. And number 5, Snow White pits women against women. All you girl bosses out there, remember to lean in and like and subscribe to this channel. Bye! Bad faith criticisms like this based off of shallow, willfully misinterpreted versions of media were kind of the bread and butter of pop culture criticism in the 2010s. So Cinderella isn't the only movie that's gotten this treatment. Due to the ubiquity of these simplistic arguments about Disney movies that kind of masquerade as feminist arguments, any adaptation of one of these Disney stories, even if it's not actually a Disney story, is going to have to contend with these criticisms. That's how we ended up with activist Cinderella and Ella Enchanted, and how we ended up with the studious, ambitious, wants to go to Princeton Cinderella in A Cinderella Story. It's also how we ended up with Girlboss Cinderella, which is Amazon's addition to this list of Cinderella movies. The Amazon retelling of Cinderella is going to be Cinderella, except she's an aspiring fashion mogul. Ooh. When I watched the Amazon trailer for Cinderella, it really got me thinking. I found it to be very interesting, and I felt like it was a very good example of how recuperation works under capitalism. Recuperation is when you take an idea or ideology that is dangerous to the status quo and you make it more palatable and make it marketable and sell it back to people as if it is still this revolutionary idea, when in actuality it's been watered down and turned back into something valuable for capitalism. This recuperation process happens especially frequently under neoliberal capitalism, which is the form of capitalism that we live under. Some examples of where you can see recuperation having happened is like if you go look online and see that you can find Che Guevara t-shirts for sale. Or if you look at all the companies that engage in the practice of greenwashing, which is making us feel like they're being environmentally friendly when they're actually not. Or you can look at the way that countercultural movements are kind of viewed with nostalgia in the modern day, when at the time they were not viewed so positively. These are all examples of how recuperation works under neoliberal capitalism. This movie in particular looks especially neoliberal to me, though. There's something very that about it, and I want to talk about that and what I mean when I say neoliberal, as well as get into the elements of the trailer that made me think this. So let's go. The recuperative version of feminism that is featured in the Amazon Cinderella movie trailer is very much a neoliberal form of feminism. Another word for this might be corporate feminism, lean-in feminism, girl boss feminism, etc. Just as a little side note, I want to make sure that everybody's clear on what I mean when I say neoliberalism. And so neoliberalism is the political philosophy that's dominated much of the last many years of politics in the United States as well as other Western countries. It's characterized by privatization of public sector industries, deregulation, individualization, austerity, treating the individual as an economic actor rather than a person. So with that in mind, let's talk about what neoliberal feminism or girlboss feminism can look like. Under neoliberal rationality, in which, like I said, each person is seen as an economic actor, neoliberal feminism treats each woman as an economic actor and views women's rights through the lens of economic activity. And so it's very focused on things like women's rights to work, women's rights to ascend in the corporate structure and accumulate power, women's rights to, be economic actors, essentially. So when you think about this in the framework of capitalism, depending on your persuasion, you might see this as saying women's rights to be exploited for their labor just like men, as well as women's rights to exploit other people for their labor just like men. That's kind of what corporate feminism is all about. Examples of where you can see this at its peak would be like Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In and Ivanka Trump's Women Who Work. Girlboss feminism or lean in feminism or whatever you want to call it will focus very much on the individual. At most, it will pay lip service to structural and systemic issues, like it might acknowledge we have a long way to go in terms of women's representation in the workplace. But aside from saying that, it doesn't necessarily present any kind of systemic solutions to these kinds of problems. Rather, it focuses on what individual women should be doing in order to achieve their individual goals as economic actors. It kind of turns a class struggle into an individual struggle, and it teaches women that they basically need to be working all of the time, always grinding to, self-improve, increase their metaphorical stock value in order to be able to have it all. That being family and work, achievements, basically. The thing about recuperation and this neoliberal feminism, which has been recuperated from other versions of feminism, is that it renders feminism impotent. It makes it about individualized personal choices that don't really move the needle for women as a whole and women as a class. And that's kind of the problem with this type of feminism. And that's also why it's easily marketable, because it doesn't challenge the status quo. The ethos of girlboss feminism is very much like you're only limited by your own willingness to work hard and dream. And, you can work hard and achieve anything you want if you just put your mind to it, and that kind of thing. And so it very much lacks intersectionality. It doesn't really take into account people's differences in terms of race, class, education, and more, which can impact someone's ability to move up in the world because of these structural inequalities that are in place. But girlboss feminism doesn't really want to talk about that very much because it's not as marketable.
Hello there, fellow boss babes. Today I'm doing a Q&A, and today's question is this. I want to start a business, but I feel stuck between being a single mom, having 2 jobs, and having grad school loans to pay. I don't feel like I can do it. What advice do you have for me? Well, my first piece of advice would be to ask yourself this. Are you stuck, or are you just not moving as fast as you'd like to be? The most important thing that I have learned is how to optimize my time. This has allowed me to achieve family-work balance. Every minute of every day, you're investing your time in something. Ask yourself, is it worth the investment?
So, what has all of this got to do with Cinderella? Well, now that I've gotten to explain neoliberalism and neoliberal feminism, I think it's time for me to walk through the trailer and point out some of the elements that I saw that made me think of this topic. So the first element is obviously her dream of becoming a CEO of a dress company, of being an entrepreneur. This is a classic example of neoliberal rationality, casting individuals as economic actors and viewing them through the lens of what kind of economic output they can achieve. It is peak corporate feminism. The second item that I wanted to discuss in the trailer is the way that it seems to handle the obvious social problems that are going on in the world of Cinderella in this movie. In the trailer, the stepmom explicitly says to Cinderella, "It's only because of the love I have for your late father that I am keeping you here and that you're not living on the streets. So this implies that this world has no social safety net because the only thing keeping her from homelessness is her family, which is putting her through all of this. The movie poses two potential solutions to Cinderella's problem. Cinderella's preferred solution would be to become a successful entrepreneur selling her dresses. And the other solution to the problem that is presented in the trailer is that she could marry the prince, and that would make her rich as well as make her family rich. The movie really wants you to focus on these two options, but it doesn't seem to be planning to explore the third option, which might be advocate to the prince, who now is interested in what you have to say that something's wrong with our society here, where young people who have not yet been able to create an income for themselves are literally forced to choose between starving and relying on people who maybe they shouldn't have to rely on. I feel like because it's coming from Amazon, a company that is definitely known for letting their employees use the bathroom, that's for sure, as well as, let's be honest, Amazon is, we all know Amazon's bad, right? So coming from this company, which I know is perpetuating a lot of the economic inequality that is leaving many people in America on the streets right now, I don't trust their choice to ignore the structural problems because they are the structural problem. Does that make any sense? It's very suspicious to me that they're only looking at it on an individual level because that's probably what they would like people to keep doing, is look at problems on the individual level instead of looking to see who's actually causing them, which tends to be the people in power, so the people with capital. So that's the second element I wanted to talk about. The third element I wanted to talk about that just screams girl boss feminism to me is the moment in the trailer where some man looks at her and she's like, ooh, she thinks she's going to be a CEO, silly woman, or something like that. It's very much like the Beauty and the Beast scene where the guy was like saying, gosh, you're teaching another girl to read. It was very much just like a parody of what sexism actually is. And I feel like this is peak corporate feminism because this type of feminism tends to look at sexism as if it is just a rude thing that a man does to a woman, as opposed to like the structure of our societies and the way that the systems run, which cause certain outcomes to be more likely for different genders. Again, it's a very individualized perspective on feminism, which just screams neoliberalism. The fourth element of the trailer that I wanted to bring up is when the prince proposes to Cinderella, she says to him, but what about my work? Which is just peak corporate feminism. Again, only viewing individuals as economic actors. But then as well, it's very obviously like a transparent attempt to kind of respond to criticisms that Cinderella, shouldn't let a man save her, she should save herself. When again, in the Disney classic, there are multiple scenes where Cinderella does save herself, and the prince is just kind of an added bonus. But anyway, the fifth element of the trailer that I want to discuss is the suit that we see Cinderella wear, which is cute, but it's also meaningless. A woman in a suit means literally nothing. And it's just kind of an example of this more palatable, not very challenging form of feminism. You know what I mean? Like a woman wearing a suit, it doesn't challenge the status quo in any way. It doesn't really make any kind of statement other than it looks vaguely feminist because she's in pants instead of a dress. So it's just another example of the kind of shallow, girl boss feminism that we see in this movie. Alrighty, so those are my thoughts on Amazon's Cinderella. I want to also clarify here that I'm not saying this movie looks bad or that it's wrong to have girl boss feminism in a movie. I just think that we as people who consume media should be actively thinking about the media we consume, especially when it's coming from a company with very specific interests that don't necessarily align with our personal best interests. So yeah, that's what I wanted this video to do, just encourage some thinking stuff. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, all of that. And yeah,